Morning, guys. So wanted to get this recorded. It's told from or presented from the perspective of folks new to living in the woods. You know, a lot of folks have moved here from California, from the Northeast, just from the cost of living. Also in the pandemic, a lot of new folks moved here that were from the Midwest as well, that just were new to living among the trees, as a lot of us have done our whole lives. But wanted to chat about a common conversation we have that is just a snippet from what some of you arborists may be taking in the next couple weeks, which is the Treeist assessment qualification. This presentation is made from a short paragraph in that book, but it leads to or informs a conversation that we often have with folks new to North Carolina, new to living in the woods. You know, if you've seen the videos, this is a drone shot of where we're at. Our shop is right here. That might be the wood stove fire. But this is common. Even in Durham, when we shoot the drone up and we're filming you guys, it looks like this. There you go. And one realization that folks have that when they're new to the Piedmont is we live in the woods, and yeah, you know, there's trees, and our trees might, or they can hit our stuff. And they haven't called an arborist yet. And so this is in their mind. And then we have storms. So then they see a tall tree move in a storm. And that's typically when they say, oh, okay, we have storms. And they do a little research. North Carolina is one of the states most susceptible to hurricanes, with a coastline that juts out into the Atlantic. The state's like a catcher's mitt. I really liked that way that was put. Catching the storms as they move north. And we also tend to be one of the higher hurricane impacts of any state in the country because of this. So we live among the trees. Trees can hit our stuff, and we have storms. We have strong storms and frequent storms. Now, this last year was a little bit of a gift, but one thing to keep in mind that we inform our clients of, or they understand, any tree, whether it has visible weakness or not, will fail if the forces applied exceed the strength of the tree or its parts. For example, gale force winds, what the heck is that? Heavy snowfall or freezing rain can break even solid, defect-free trees. And just so you guys know, a gale is a strong wind, typically at a speed of between 39 and 54 miles per hour. All right, so we live in the trees, we have storms, we have strong storms, frequent storms. That shifts from our trees might hit our stuff to our trees will hit our stuff. This is typically when we have clients reach out to us. They're like, okay, I've experienced my first little storm. My tree's gonna hit my stuff. What do I do? So I'm feeling like I should remove my trees. Not all of them, right? Just most of them. Most of them, maybe keep my neighbor's trees. Very common way to interpret this. But the Treeist comes out, and we point out this very important point. Your neighbors have trees. Neighbors have a lot of trees. Because they also live in the woods, right? Just like you do. And here's a good example. Your neighbors have tall trees, right? So if you look here, this is that same photo from the Orange County GIS that shows the property boundaries. Each one of these trees is as tall, let me see how I put this, is as tall as the property boundary is wide, right? So if you think about this tree at Mr. Farrington's house can hit this house. There's some trees in between it. This tree can hit this house. Anyway, just something to think about. But it's new to folks that are living among the trees. Their trees will also hit your stuff because they're tall. So where that leaves us in these conversations, which it sounds like a downer, but it's not yet, just hang on. We live in the woods, our trees can hit our stuff. We have storms that changes the can to trees will hit our stuff. And our neighbors have trees, and their trees will also hit our stuff. And at this point, they're like, what do I do? This is depressing. On the bright side, we will say, sometimes trees are goalies. And they'll still be depressed and looking at us like you're crazy. But hear me out. Take this example. We have a white oak that failed and is pinned by a much smaller pine that's between this failure and the house, right? It's a goalie. Here's the same tree from a different angle, right? Here's another example of a red oak failed and pinned with 2 white oaks. That's a tennis court, not a house, but it would have smashed it. So it's a good goalie. The greater the distance from the tree to the target, the greater the force that the tree or branch will have at the point of impact. Sounds like common sense, but it's often forgotten, when we mix storms in there. If the distance from a tree trunk to a well-built multi-story house is short, a tree that fails may simply lean against the house, causing minor damage. Now, that is something to keep in mind. Poorly structured trees close to your house, not a good thing. But well-structured trees close to your house, I guess it's the best of what may be looked at as a bummer scenario once somebody that lives among the trees realizes that trees move and trees fail, and they will fail in a storm. If we go back here, we've actually had some folks call us out after they have either scheduled or removed all the trees from around their house, but these trees can also hit their house, and these trees are out of their control. This is a challenge because now you've created some edge trees that haven't grown up with the same stress that these are going to have, and you've increased the distance to your house, right, to the target. So, important thing to think about, bums them out, but talking about the ones that we can catch, the houses that we can catch that haven't done this, or the clients that we can catch that haven't done this, we can convince them to leave trees. And we can also convince them to leave tree parts because of tree part plinko, right? So the game of plinko, and I have my little prop here. If you guys have all heard the term limb up, like can you limb up trees? Well, if we limb up the tree, I'll remove it here, my little prop. So this is, oh no, this is gonna go so well. If we limb up the tree, this is typically like what it's, well, we'll even go further. Sometimes you're like, there's not gonna be anything left. If we limb up the tree, like this is a lot of the thought process here, which we get. Like I understand the reaction to it. If we limb this up, we're simply increasing the chance that something causes catastrophic damage to the house, right? We're increasing the distance that it falls and impacts. We're also, what's fascinating too is if when you guys are in the tops of pines, when something falls and you're like, oh, it fell flat, that's cool. If it falls long enough and it's top heavy, turns into a dart, which is, I think most tree folks will understand that as well. So when we have conversations with folks, we're encouraging them to leave lower branches for a couple different reasons, like our understanding of tree biology and mechanics. Lower limbs are great for trees for other purposes, which we're not going to talk about in this presentation. But if we leave this stuff, let's see if I can get this back in here, we can play tree part plinko, and maybe we don't put that last limb in there. Well, let's put it in there. Maybe we remove this last limb for insects and pests, right? Like to make it harder for squirrels. We've seen that, that's kind of severe. Make it harder for squirrels to impact the house. But we want to do as little as possible while still leaving a lot of the plinko game intact. So when something falls, it can hit and either get caught up or greatly reduce the impact of the house, not turn into one of those darts that goes through the roof. So tree part plinko is a good thing. It's hard to have this conversation with someone that has previously had a tree fall through their house or impact their house negatively, also financially, or possibly hurt or injured a family member. But I think it's a very rational way to approach it if your neighbors have trees that are tall enough to hit your house. If not, go to town. I mean, you might be losing some of the benefits of other benefits of trees, but this is a frequent conversation that we have. So it comes back to, we live in the woods, our trees can hit our stuff. We have storms that will change the can to will hit our stuff. Our neighbors have trees and their trees will also hit our stuff. What do? Well, now we'd like to have goalies protecting our stuff, since our neighbors have trees that will hit our stuff. We'd also like to have well-structured trees as close to our stuff as possible to avoid catastrophic momentum. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, hopefully, the folks that are in the area are feeling a little bit like this. I'm feeling like I should keep all of my well-structured trees and keep their branches strategically close to my stuff. Being able to talk in this way has helped a lot of our clients understand and kind of dial back that knee-jerk reaction of removing goalies, removing perfectly healthy trees. And I'm not coming at this from a point of, and I'll tell them this, I'm not coming at this point of like tree preservation, of the benefits, the ecological benefits of trees. It's more of the utility of the trees and the structures for living in the woods that can often save your property or minimize the damage to your property. And then I encourage folks to think about changing their perspective. A tree part will hit your house. It's going to happen. It's going to happen because of the storms. It's going to happen because we live in the woods. It's going to hit your house. So knowing that, I think that's a positive thing. Then you can make a decision, do I want that tree part to be close to my house? Do I want that tree part to be really far away from my house and pick up momentum? But I think we should shift our expectations to when something hits my house, what do I want that to look like? And then you can have a much more dynamic conversation with somebody. Now, it's a very different and tough conversation when somebody has said, yes, and Fran, I had 2 trees go through my house. It's really tough. In those situations, be respectful and be looking for other high-risk trees that maybe aren't on their property that you can talk to them about to drive that fact home. Maybe we strategically reduce a tree, but we leave it as a protective structure. Any thoughts, reactions? I would love your questions. Anybody? All right, that's it. This is going to be a small portion of your Treeist assessment qualification, but it's a conversation that you're probably going to have in your career as an arborist, especially here at the Treeist. Cool, that's it. Yep.